In today's video, we have one of the most audacious airport robberies in British history at Heathrow Airport. Inside the sprawling SWISSPORT warehouse, millions in gold bullion, diamonds and cash waited distribution to banks and merchants across the United Kingdom. For a small but determined gang of career criminals, the haul represented the ultimate prize, £33 million in untraceable riches. Led by John Beach, a man who once worked inside Heathrow's logistic network, and his crew had previously robbed a van of £4.5 million. They believed they had the perfect plan. We do a deep dive into the case, the police investigation, and the trial. By the early 2000s, Heathrow Airport had become a global hub, not just for passengers, but for precious cargo. Every year, Heathrow's warehouses handled billions of pounds worth of high-value goods, including gold bullion, uncut diamonds, cash shipments, luxury electronics, and pharmaceuticals. Among the many warehouses scattered around the airport perimeter, SWISSPORT was one of the busiest. It specialised in the storage and dispatch of valuable cargo arriving from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Security at SWISSPORT was strong, but like all systems, it had weaknesses. The very complexity of Heathrow's cargo operations, multiple companies, subcontractors, and layers of management created an environment where an insider could learn dangerous secrets. And John Beach had done exactly that. John Beach was not your ordinary criminal. He grew up in the criminal fraternity, but went legit. In the late 1990s, he had worked in various roles inside Heathrow's freight and logistics sector, including periods at SWISSPORT. He learned the patterns of movement, which shifts had the lightest staffing, how shipments were logged, where security cameras were placed and where they weren't, how cargo was segregated in secure and unsecured areas, the response times of police and private security in emergencies. For Beach, this information was worth more than a wage packet. He quietly left his job around 2001 and slipped into the criminal life. His first major crime, the February 2002 Heathrow cash in transit robbery, had been a spectacular success. With insider knowledge, Beach and his team intercepted a delivery van near the airport, stealing £4.5 million in cash. It was stolen from a plane being unloaded on the runway at Heathrow. Though police suspected an inside job, no immediate arrests were made. The details of the robbery were that, before dawn on February 11, 2002, two unknown robbers who have never been caught masqueraded as police and overpowered a Heathrow worker near Terminal 4 as he unloaded sums of various currencies from a British Airways plane flown into the UK from Bahrain. The men who received a tip-off that the Bahrain flight BA124 was carrying money escaped with £4.5 million in cash. The robbery emboldened Beach, proving to him that airports could be robbed if one knew how. And now in 2004, he believed he could pull off an even greater theft. Beach spent months assembling the plan for the SWISSPORT raid. He recruited a crew of seasoned criminals, each chosen for their reliability, loyalty and ruthlessness. Most were people he knew growing up, and others recommended by someone he trusted, Martin Nolan. The key members included Martin Nolan, was 30 years old, a professional armed robber with previous convictions for violent thefts. Stephen Nolan, 23 years old, Martin's younger brother and a trusted enforcer. James Fox, 31 years old, experienced in warehouse burglaries. Christopher Smith, 29 years old, another burglar with a history of robberies. Alan Lamont, 31 years old, was a skilled getaway driver. John Davis, 22 years old, a muscle man, tough and trusted. He'll be used for their physical intimidation and to keep employees on the floor with their nose pressed into the concrete. Anthony Charles, 36 years old, and Derek Sheehan, 33 years old, were seasoned petty criminals with no fear and won't bottle it at the signs of police confrontation. Beach himself would not attend the robbery in person. Instead, he would coordinate remotely, ensuring a layer of separation between himself and the scene of the crime. The plan was bold: attack at the quietest hour, 3 AM on a Monday morning. Smash through the loaded dock shutters with a stolen courier van. overwhelmed the small overnight staff with blunt weapons, loot cages of bullion, diamonds and cash, and escaped within minutes before police could respond. Timing, precision and overwhelming shock were the key ingredients. Preparation was needed: stolen vans, surveillance and rehearsals. In early 2004, the gang began their preparation phase. They stole a white Mercedes Sprinter van from West London, a perfect match for the type of delivery vehicles used at SWISSPORT by contractors. They altered the van, removing identifying marks, fitting false plates and reinforcing the front, welding a steel girder bar to the chassis to act as a battering ram. Surveillance of the SWISSPORT warehouse became a daily routine. Beach directed Martin Nolan and others to study guard shift changes, the number of staff on overnight duty, positions of CCTV cameras, and patterns of cargo movement. During March and April 2004, police surveillance teams from the flying squad also noticed suspicious behaviour from around the cargo area. Unknown to the gang, they were already under observation. The flying squad launched Operation Grafton, a full-scale covert surveillance and intelligence operation focused on preventing the looming robbery. They fitted tracking devices to vehicles used by suspected gang members and monitored their mobile phone activity. Still, the police did not know exactly when or how the gang would strike. On the night of Sunday, May 16, 2004, the gang gathered in West London. Their stolen van was ready. Weapons, mostly blunt force items like hammers, axes and crowbars, were packed. The plan was set: drive into SWISSPORT at 3 AM, smash the shutter gates, subdue the minimal night staff, load as much bullion and cash as possible, and escape before armed police could intercept. John Beach remained away from the scene, coordinating by burner phones. He trusted Martin Nolan to lead the physical team inside the warehouse. At around 2:30 AM, the gang began moving towards Heathrow, taking side roads to avoid police patrols. The flying squad, observing their movements, moved into final positions. At precisely 3 AM on May 17, 2004, the stolen white van smashed through SWISSPORT's main shuttered loading dock. The noise was deafening. Metal crumpled and alarms sounded across the compound. 8 masked men clad in dark clothes and gloves burst from the vehicle, carrying hammers, axes and crowbars. They quickly overwhelmed the startled warehouse staff, forcing them to the floor at weapon point. No shots were fired, the gang carried no guns, but the threat was unmistakable. The robbers began searching for cages containing bullion and valuables. Their inside knowledge helped them head straight for the correct areas. They broke open secured sections and started dragging out heavy bags and crates filled with precious cargo. Within minutes they had located millions in assets, gold bullion bars, large packets of foreign currency, and crates suspected to contain uncut diamonds. The robbery was proceeding like clockwork. But outside the warehouse, unseen by the gang, the flying squad was already moving. Detective Chief Inspector Geoffrey Curtis, in command of the police operation, gave the order to strike. More than 40 heavily armed flying squad officers stormed the SWISSPORT compound in coordinated teams. They moved with military precision, blocking all exits, entering into the warehouse from multiple points, overwhelming the robbers before they could organise resistance. The gang had no chance. Within 2 minutes of the break-in, most of the robbers were pinned to the ground, arrested at the scene. Several attempted to fight back or flee. Martin Nolan was tackled while trying to escape through a side exit. Stephen Nolan resisted arrest, swinging at officers with a hammer, but was quickly subdued. Christopher Smith and James Fox are caught, still hauling stolen cargo. The robbers had managed to load 5 boxes of gold into the van before being arrested. One gang member, Anthony Charles, managed to hijack a passing vehicle and flee the airport. He was pursued across West London and arrested within hours. Another John Davis fled on foot but was arrested 2 days later after police tracked his movements through his phone data. In total, 9 men were arrested and charged over the robbery. Not a single bar of gold or a bag of cash left SWISSPORT. Though he wasn't at the scene, John Beach's involvement quickly came to light. Phone records showed constant communication between Beach and Martin Nolan in the days and hours before the robbery. Surveillance footage linked Beach to planning meetings, burner phones found in Beach's possession, matched numbers recorded by police. Searches of Beach's home uncovered damning evidence, maps of Heathrow's cargo areas, surveillance photographs of SWISSPORT staff and buildings, detailed notes on shift patterns and delivery schedules, burner mobile phones preloaded with numbers of his team. He faced overwhelming evidence. Beach was arrested without resistance. Police believed Beach had deliberately stayed away from the robbery scene to create a false alibi, but his fingerprints, metaphorically speaking, were all over the operation. In the summer of 2005, the 9 arrested men, including John Beach, stood trial at Alresford Crown Court in West London. The case was one of the most significant organised crime trials seen in Britain. The prosecution, led by Crown Counsel David Waters, Queen's Counsel, laid out the evidence meticulously. Phone records tied Beach and others together, forensic evidence from the van and tools used to break in, eyewitness testimony from SWISSPORT staff held hostage during the raid, surveillance footage from police tracking operations prior to the robbery, and recorded surveillance notes and maps at Beach's home. The defence for most of the men was weak. Most attempted to claim mistaken identity or denied participation outright, but the sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming. Key facts emerged during the trial. John Beach had previous insider knowledge of Heathrow's SWISSPORT systems. The gang had rehearsed their movements in industrial estate across West London weeks before the raid. They had targeted SWISSPORT warehouse because it was a unique delivery of bullion from Johannesburg, South Africa, scheduled for the night of May the 16th. The Flying Squad's Operation Grafton had wiretapped some members, catching critical conversations discussing the big one. John Beach, even though he was not physically at SWISSPORT during the robbery, was described by prosecutors as a mastermind. Without his planning, surveillance and knowledge, the raid would have been impossible. The trial lasted 12 weeks. Throughout it, Beach remained calm and emotionless, even as damning evidence piled up against him. In October 2005, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict on nearly all counts: conspiracy to rob, conspiracy to commit aggravated burglary, conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. The sentences were harsh, but reflected the seriousness of the crime. John Beach was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Martin Nolan was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Stephen Nolan was sentenced to 15 years. James Fox received a 14-year sentence. Christopher Smith received a 14-year sentence. Alan Lamont was sentenced to 12 years. John Davis got a 10-year sentence. Anthony Charles was sentenced to 11 years. Derek Sheehan received a 12-year sentence. Judge Simon Smith told the men this was a professionally planned and ruthless executed attack on a highly sensitive and vital part of Britain's commerce. You sought to steal untold millions and were prepared to use violence against innocent workers. You showed contempt for the law and for society. Beach's 18-year sentence reflected his pivotal role as a planner and coordinator. After sentencing, John Beach was sent to serve his time at HMP Long Lartin, a high-security prison housing many of Britain's most dangerous organised criminals. Beach was wisely despised among inmates, seen as a bottler for staying away from the robbery site, while others went into harm's way. His criminal reputation suffered. No longer the charismatic figure he once had been among West London's criminal fraternity, Beach became isolated. Later, appeals by Beach's legal team, arguing that his sentence was manifestly excessive because he was not physically present, were rejected by the Court of Appeal. The judgment stated the mastermind of the conspiracy bears equal, if not greater culpability than those carrying out the physical act. The attempted £33 million robbery at SWISSPORT had massive consequences for security at Heathrow Airport. Following the robbery, SWISSPORT completely overhauled its overnight warehouse security. Heathrow installed new anti-ram barriers at all cargo entrances. Security staff numbers were doubled during night shifts. Private security firms introduced a more aggressive background checks on employees, targeting those with links to crime or suspicious financial behaviour. John Beach's insider knowledge had exposed critical flaws that authorities rushed to fix. The robbery also led to an increase in police presence at Heathrow, including plainclothes units specifically tasked for monitoring cargo operations. The British Airports Authority, BAAA, spent over £15 million enhancing surveillance and rapid response capabilities. The trial for the 2002 cash van raid. The prosecution of the 2002 robbery was made possible by evidence from a supergrass. A former Heathrow ramp worker who admitted being the robber's inside man. The grass, who cannot be named for legal reasons, confessed to his part in the conspiracy in the hope of a more lenient sentence. He admitted leaving vans in loading bays at Heathrow for Beach and Burville. He said the plans for 2002 job went back as far as 1999. John Beach was sentenced for an additional 7 years for his part in the 2002 robbery of the Bahrain flight BA124, ordering both terms to run consecutively. Beach's partner in crime, 47-year-old baggage handler Bernard Burville, was also found guilty of conspiracy to rob in the 2002 Heathrow heist. He was sent down for 10 years. The jury failed to reach a verdict on the same charge relating to a third man. Prosecutor Anthony Glass, Queen's Counsel, said that in both heists, Beach had been a link between the robbers and the inside agents. Mr. Glass told the trial, "Our case against Beach is that, one of important link between the robbers and the inside man, of Beach's involvement in the SWISSPORT heist." The Queen's Counsel argued similarities between the two raids should convince the jury that he had masterminding both. The Heathrow SWISSPORT robbery is today studied by police and criminologists as a casebook example of the danger of insider threats, the importance of early intervention based on surveillance, the risk of inheriting complex logistical networks handling high-value goods. For the flying squad, the operation was a huge success. They not only foiled a £33 million theft, but dismantled a dangerous gang before they could escalate to more violent operations. For John Beach, Martin Nolan, and the others, the robbery marked a peak and collapse of their criminal careers. They gambled everything for a chance and unimaginable wealth. In the end, they left SWISSPORT not with gold and diamonds, but in handcuffs. The Heathrow SWISSPORT robbery was the product of ambition, greed and inside knowledge. John Beach believed he had built the perfect crime, leveraging his intimate knowledge of the airport's operations to orchestrate a surgical strike that could net a lifetime's fortune in minutes. But the very things that made the plan possible, reliance on a crew of violent career criminals, the use of burner phones, the necessity of months of surveillance, also made them visible to determined, patient officers. Beach's arrogance in believing he could stay away from the scene and avoid prosecution was his ultimate downfall. Every call he made, every meeting he attended, every instruction he gave, the flying squad documented it all. In the end, no amount of planning could overcome the simple truth. Crime leaves traces, and for John Beach and his crew, the SWISSPORT robbery would become the monument to their own self-destruction. It stands as a reminder that in shadows of London's busiest airport, even the boldest criminal conspiracies can be crushed by patient, relentless law enforcement. In the end, the Heathrow SWISSPORT robbers had the perfect plan, right up until the moment it met reality. They had the van, the tools, the inside knowledge, and apparently just enough arrogance to think the flying squad might sleep through it. Instead, they got a front row seat to one of Britain's most efficient police takedowns. The only thing they made off with was a collection of criminal records, bruised egos, and some very awkward prison reunions. Let this be a lesson. If your master heist plan involves crashing into a warehouse with a van and hoping nobody notices, maybe don't try it at the most heavily surveilled airport in the country. John Beach fancied himself as a criminal mastermind, an Ocean's 11's type, minus the charisma, the suit, and a functioning exit strategy. His handpicked team of robbers showed all the finesse of a pub brawl on a quiz night. It all came to a crushing realisation they were not in fact Danny Ocean. Not that Danny Ocean. that Danny Ocean. Just 9 blokes who will now spend the next few years explaining to cellmates how they're this close to 33 million quid.